A headache, a cut, a sore tooth, an upset stomach, a pill, a bandage, a shrug, a glass of water, and you move on, all before lunch, without a second thought. For most of human history, none of that was an option. So what did people actually do? That's not a small question. That's most of human history. Start with the headache. Today, it's a pill and a glass of water. 50,000 years ago, in a cave in Spain called El Sidrón, a Neanderthal had a version of the same problem and a version of the same reflex. A researcher named Karen Hardy studied the hardened plaque, still stuck to that Neanderthal's teeth, preserved completely by accident for tens of thousands of years. Inside it, she found chemical traces of two plants, yarrow, chamomile, both bitter, neither one food, both used for pain and swelling for as long as anyone has kept records of medicine at all. Someone, long before a single word was ever written down, already knew which plants to chew when something hurt. Same impulse as you reaching into a cabinet. Wildly different toolkit. Now, the cut. You barely register it. A quick sting, a bandage, and you move on with your morning, already thinking about something else entirely. For most of human history, that same small cut carried real risk, because nobody understood bacteria yet, and an infection with nowhere to go could quietly get worse for weeks before anyone knew why. There was no name for what was happening, no diagnosis, just a wound that wouldn't close, and the people close enough to notice it wasn't healing right. Most of the time, the body handled it on its own. Sometimes it didn't, and there was nothing left to do but watch and wait, and try to help however anyone could. And sometimes, the injury wasn't small at all. In 2022, an archaeologist named Tim Maloney found a skeleton in a cave in Borneo. It belonged to someone in their late teens. One leg ended just below the knee, in a clean, healed line. Not an accident. Not an animal attack. A surgery. Done on purpose, 31,000 years ago. The bone around the cut had smoothed and rounded the way bone only does when a body keeps living for years after the wound. Somebody removed that leg. Somebody kept it clean long enough that infection didn't win. Somebody fed a person who couldn't walk or hunt for years and got nothing physical back for it. Your cut gets a bandage. Their cut, once, meant an operation, followed by years of being carried. Now the tooth. You feel that twinge, you make a mental note, and by dinner you've forgotten. Archaeologists have found something that stops that thought cold. Ancient teeth, drilled, not decayed away. Drilled, on purpose, with a tool, straight into the enamel, roughly 9,000 years ago. Someone had already worked out that pressure building inside a tooth needed somewhere to go, and built a tool sharp enough and precise enough to give it one. And people survived it. People kept living with a hole bored into a molar by a stranger holding a sharpened stone against their face. You'd cancel the appointment and reschedule for next week without a second thought. They didn't have that option. Whoever sat in front of that ancient dentist stayed still for it anyway, because the alternative, a tooth left to rot from the inside, was worse. Here's where the mystery gets bigger, because sometimes the pain wasn't in a tooth. Sometimes it was in the skull itself. Think about the worst headache you've ever had, the kind where you half joke that someone should just open up your head and fix it. Ancient people did not joke about that. They did it. Trepanation, cutting a deliberate hole into the skull, is the oldest known form of surgery on Earth. Archaeologists have found thousands of examples of it on every inhabited continent, in wildly different cultures with no contact with one another, which alone should tell you something. In ancient Peru, researchers tracking these skulls across almost 2,000 years found something almost impossible to believe. In the earliest period, only around 4 in 10 patients survived the operation. By the time of the Inca Empire, centuries later, that number had climbed to somewhere between 75 and 90%. Up to 9 in 10 of these skulls show real bone healing around the hole, meaning the person didn't just survive the operation itself. They lived for months or years afterward. Compare that to American Civil War surgeons working with far more advanced tools, nearly 400 years later, who lost roughly half their patients to the exact same kind of operation. Somehow, working outdoors with sharpened stone, ancient surgeons in Peru were getting better results than surgeons with steel scalpels centuries later. How does that even happen without hospitals, without germ theory, without anesthesia, the way you know it? Practice. Careful technique, repeated and refined. And, almost certainly, a patient who was held still, and watched, and cared for, by people who weren't going anywhere. Now think about a different kind of daily pain. The dull ache in your lower back after too many hours at a desk. The knee that clicks a little on the stairs. You mention it once, someone tells you to stretch more, and you move on. On a mountain between Austria and Italy, a man died more than 5,000 years ago and froze solid enough to keep his skin intact. We call him Ötzi. His body carries 61 tattoos, small dark dotted lines, clustered mostly around his knees, his ankles, his lower back. Not exactly the places you'd pick for decoration. When scientists scanned his bones, they found arthritis in exactly those same joints. Some researchers think the marks weren't decoration at all. They think Ötzi's tattoos were medicine, placed on the exact points where the pain actually lived, thousands of years before anyone in China wrote down the idea of acupuncture. Not everyone agrees on that. It's still debated, and probably always will be, but whoever put those marks on his skin, whether it was Ötzi himself or someone who cared for him, was responding to something real. You stretch it out. He carried his pain, quite literally, on his skin, marked and treated for the rest of his life. Here's the part that flips the whole picture upside down, though. Life didn't actually get safer once humans stopped wandering and settled down to farm. It got more dangerous. Once people stayed in one place, disease finally had an easy job. Waste piled up instead of being left behind with the last campsite. Livestock lived close enough to breathe on you every day and drink from the same water you did. Grain-heavy diets replaced varied ones, and teeth, bones, and immune systems all quietly paid for it. That stomachache you shrugged off earlier, the one you drank some water and waited out, that exact kind of gut illness, spread through shared water and crowded living, became dramatically more common the moment humans stopped moving on and started staying put. In the 1980s, researchers Mark Cohen and George Armalagos pulled together skeletal evidence from 21 societies making that same shift all around the world. In 19 of the 21, health got measurably worse, not better. Shorter adults, weaker bones, more infectious disease. The world you probably picture as primitive and dangerous was, in some very real, measurable ways, healthier than the advanced one that replaced it. One more daily moment, and this might be the biggest one. It's 2 a.m, and something feels wrong. You reach for your phone. You call someone. A partner, a parent, an emergency line, someone who will come. Anthropologist Wenda Trevathan calls the human version of this obligate midwifery. Human babies are born with unusually large heads through an unusually narrow pelvis, a side effect of walking upright, and the result is that human mothers, almost alone among primates, need help during birth. Other primates mostly give birth alone, in private, and manage fine without another set of hands. Humans don't get that option. In every single human culture ever studied, without exception, someone comes. Someone held her hand. Someone knew, from watching it happen before, roughly what to do next, even with no training beyond having seen it once already. Childbirth may have been the single most dangerous moment in a person's entire life 50,000 years ago. No modern hospital would accept those odds today. And yet it wasn't handled alone, in the dark, by one person figuring it out for the first time. It never has been. Not once. In any culture anyone has ever studied. That 2 a.m. phone call is old. Much older than phones. Much older than language. If the pattern in other primates is anything to go by. Go back to a cave in Iraq called Shanidar, where in 1957, an archaeologist named Ralph Selecki uncovered the skeleton of a Neanderthal, now known as Shanidar I. This man had taken a serious blow to the side of his face years before he died. His right arm ended just below the elbow, withered and unusable, broken so badly early in life that it never healed straight. His leg was deformed. He'd lost most of his hearing. None of it killed him. He lived for years after every single injury, maybe decades. Think about what that actually requires. A one-armed, partly deaf man with a badly damaged face, in an Ice Age landscape full of large predators, with almost no ability to hunt, and almost no ability to defend himself if something came at him in the dark. Alone in that world, he had no real path to old age at all. None. So he wasn't alone. Somebody hunted for him, and brought back a share he hadn't earned by any modern survival logic. Somebody guided him across ground he couldn't fully see. Somebody chose, day after day, year after year, to keep alive a person who could give almost nothing physical back in return. Not once, as an emergency, in a single crisis. As a way of life, sustained for what may have been decades of ordinary days. That's not survival of the fittest. Whatever that is, it's something else entirely. Think back to those 4 small moments from the very start. The pill you barely think about, the bandage you barely notice, the dentist you keep meaning to call, the stomachache you shrug off with a glass of water. None of that is a bad thing. Nobody's saying you should feel grateful for having less medicine. Nobody would trade places with that amputee from Borneo, and you shouldn't either. But maybe something got a little quieter along the way. When care was the only medicine there was, noticing someone else's pain wasn't optional. It wasn't a kindness you could skip when you were busy. It was the entire system. You watched the people around you closely, because their survival and yours were the same problem. Ancient humans didn't build community because it felt nice. They built it because a person alone, hurt, with nothing else available, simply did not make it. That instinct is still in you, mostly unused. You still notice when a friend goes quiet in a group chat. You still feel that small, specific pull to check on someone who seems a little off, even when you can't say exactly why. You still, on some level, clock who in a room looks tired or pale or like they're pushing through something they haven't mentioned out loud. That pull is older than medicine, older than farming. It's the same instinct that once kept a one-armed, badly injured man alive through an ice age, still running quietly under a life where you almost never need it to survive anymore, waiting for you to use it on purpose instead of by accident. So the next time you swallow a pill without thinking, or reach for a bandage, or make that mental note about the dentist, or shrug off a stomachache with a glass of water, remember that all 4 problems are exactly as old as you are, as a species. Every one of them has been solved, badly or brilliantly, by every human who ever lived before you. What's changed isn't the pain itself. It's who, or what, shows up to answer it. For most of human history, the answer was never a pill, a bandage, or a drill. It was a person who chose to stay, for no better reason than that someone else needed them to.